Good afternoon, folks. This is Chris in Orania, and I'm up here at the site where they have busts of famous Afrikaans and Boer leaders, including Paul Kruger over here on the far side, the very far right, and then across here, and the symbol of the community here, rolling up the sleeves and working hard. So I want to address something that President Trump has addressed, Steve Hofmeyr recently addressed, and Professor G has been saying for some time, talking about a white genocide, specifically a genocide against Afrikaners. By saying white, you would mean all whites. But this one's specifically one that folks are concerned about, focusing on Afrikaners here in South Africa, a distinct cultural and linguistic group that formed from immigrants from the Netherlands, French Huguenots, fleeing from oppression in France when the Edict of Nantes was revoked, and also many, many Germans, with a little bit of admixture of some other folks in there. But this is a group that's developed over the past few centuries, and they feel under pressure, and rightly so. I have never equivocated about a cultural genocide, an intentional effort to stamp out the language of Afrikaans and the culture of Afrikaans. Never equivocated for even a moment about that. Steve Hofmeyr recently did a video on his Steve Storm, and he's angry that people aren't angry and they aren't calling things out as they are. Well, one thing's for certain. There are steps along the path to genocide that academics have established, saying that if you reach this stage, then this stage, and this stage, eventually reach a full-blown genocide. And many of these academics claim and state, in fact, some unequivocally, that South Africa has reached stage 8 or stage 9 of genocide. It's difficult to argue with their point academically or intellectually. But let's ask ourselves this question. When do we talk about genocides? Usually after the people are slaughtered. Were there people on the ground making a difference, stopping the Armenian genocide in the early 20th century in Turkey? No. It was horrible. What about the genocide against their own people by Pol Pot in the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia? While people were slaughtered, the world was largely looking the other way. And let's go to the most poignant case here that goes back before that, and that, of course, is in Nazi Germany. The National Socialists blocked Jews from owning businesses. They blocked Jews from entering universities. They blocked them career fields. And what do we see happening in South Africa? White men are limited to a tiny percentage of the executive positions in private businesses now. People are being forced to learn in a language that's not their own when they go to primary school under the Bella Act. There is now expropriation without compensation at every level. Any official at the national level, at the provincial level, at the local level can confiscate your property. And make no mistake, property is not just farmland. Property is your financial assets, your retirement plans, your medical aid, your Krugerrands, your savings, your apartments, your buckies, your jewelry. This is property. And under Section 25 of the Constitution, property is defined. It includes things like that. The new expropriation law, which took effect last year, is a very dangerous political weapon in the wrong hands, and it shouldn't exist. There's no need for it. Section 25 allowed for expropriation with just and fair compensation. But people don't want to pay that. They want to claim that all that was built in this country was stolen from someone else. And that's just historical hogwash. Yes, there was colonization by the Nguni-speaking peoples 1,600 years ago and continue on, then by Europeans. But these things are lost to the sands of history. South Africa made a smart decision to allow land claims after the Native Lands Act of 1910, or after the Union of South Africa Act, I should say. And that was wise. But people are reneging on that now, and they're also attacking Afrikaners with laws, with policies, with court decisions that undermine their ability to survive in their own country. A people forged in this country, an identity that didn't grow up anywhere else but here in South Africa. We didn't recognize the genocide of the Jews in the Holocaust. We didn't recognize the genocide of the Khmer Rouge killing Cambodians. We didn't recognize the Armenians by and large. And one more. And I know this because I was on a warning order to deploy to evacuate people from Rwanda in 1994. We didn't go because someone, Susan Rice, in the Clinton administration said in a meeting, a cabinet meeting, well, if we call Rwanda a genocide, what happens to the Democratic Party in the midterm elections? Can you believe that? That's how cynical people like that are, how callous and uncaring they are about life. So are we seeing a genocide against Afrikaners unfold in South Africa? Well, that's for you to decide. I'm not here to tell you one way or the other. And I'm not being politically correct. I'm being factual, which is what I always am. Certainly, if we wait until we can say all the steps have been met, well, then it's too late. Then 6 million Jews are dead. Then the Afrikaners are dispossessed and living in poverty or disappearing as an ethnic group altogether. So is there a genocide? You decide. But historically, we never call them genocides, sadly, until all the people are gone. 850,000 Rwandans murdered with pungas, machetes, in the most brutal fashion. Over 1 million Cambodians murdered by their own people. And hundreds of thousands of Armenians wiped out. What has to happen in South Africa before people start noticing what's going on? Before people start saying it's unjust that a government must create 145 race-based laws to discriminate against a group of people based on one factor, not based on their sexuality, not based on their language, although that's an issue, not based on their faith, but based solely on the immutable fact of skin pigmentation, DNA, over which none of us have any control. I was born into this body with this skin pigmentation. And so is every black, brown, and white South African. They have no control over that. To make rules and laws and use the lame excuse that it's righting historical wrongs by punishing children born in the year 2026 is morally reprehensible. It's vile, it's repulsive. And we all know that broad-based black economic empowerment is not lifting black South Africans out of poverty. Quite the opposite. In 1994, there were about 10 or 12 million South Africans who were black living in abject poverty. Today, that number is closer to 30 million, 26 to 30 million blacks living in abject poverty. And they're frustrated, and rightly so. But their anger should be directed towards the people who are productive and are trying to be part of this country and share it with them. The National Party capitulated. It gave up. And the ANC came into power. And in many ways, it's behaved the exact same way that the National Party did. The love of parastatals, the love of patronage, with the key distinction being that at least under the National Party, its patronage went to competent people and largely honest people. Is there a genocide in South Africa? Well, the media seems to think so. They use it as a foil to dismiss the plight and sufferings of people in South Africa, Afrikaners and white South Africans. And shame on them. They should be held to a higher standard. The fourth estate's mission is to hold the government accountable and to inform the public, neither of which is being done here or frankly in my own country. Shame on all of them, so-called journalists, so-called media outlets. If there isn't a white genocide here, there certainly is something evil going on. Reporting from Oranje, this is Chris. What say you, South Africa? Zanzi? Cheers.